In this update, we're going to be tracking our next snowstorm that will be starting to set up across the upper Midwest and into the Mid-Atlantic region. And then further off into the West Coast, we've got two areas of disturbed weather. The first one is going to be impacting the West Coast over the coming days, but we have yet a second one that will be lurking behind that. So yes, that means a lot of rainfall coming for those areas in and along the West Coast. So I appreciate all my subscribers out there. This channel is up to 232,000 subscribers. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm here on a daily basis putting out a lot of content. In fact, I've done over 1,300 videos. So if you are new to the channel, hit the subscribe button and follow along with all my daily breakdowns. So let's take a look at where we stand right now. So there's the storm cloud, the first one that's going to be impacting the West Coast. A lot of heavier rainfall, especially along the coastal regions, but that definitely promises to start building further south, deeper into California, and eventually head into Southern California in the coming days. But more concerning is this complex of freezing rain and starting snow showers ahead of an Arctic front. So the first front that's moving across Texas this afternoon is more of a Pacific front, but the Arctic front is lurking behind that with the true Arctic air and another surge of these plunging temperatures. And that will be setting the stage for more snowfall across this region. And unfortunately, some ice will be starting to set up across those areas into the Memphis, into the Nashville region. So they do have an expanded view of this winter weather advisories and isolated winter storm warnings in place with the swath of snow that will be coming out of South Dakota through Sioux Falls into the Cedar Rapids region, all the way through Illinois, going into Fort Wayne, Indiana, and then extending into the Pittsburgh region. And then further south, we've got to be concerned about wintry precipitation in the form of freezing rain down here towards Memphis, into Nashville, down towards Knoxville, and then heavier snows as you start extending into some of the higher elevations. But I think this extends all the way into the coast, and this will likely be extended for some of these areas in and along the I-95 corridor here, as those are those wind chill advisories in place, with those dangerously cold wind chills coming back into the picture. So you've got like a very short reprieve, like a 1 or 2 day reprieve from the intense cold. This second batch of cold is not as intense, but it's still very cold for January. Here's where we stand right now as far as temperatures. You can see the Arctic air lurking up there in Canada with those negative numbers hanging out with singles and teens below zero. And that is eventually going to be diving southbound. So yes, definitely enjoy the shorter break from the little bit warmer reprieve and from the extended long duration. I think Oklahoma City hit 116 hours below freezing. I think Dallas Fort Worth ended around 89 hours. So yes, definitely enjoy the overall warmer day ahead before this Arctic front plunges in those areas tonight. And that promises to bring even colder temperatures. But in its wake, yes, we've got to be concerned for today with the cold air that's likely in place right now in and around the Tennessee and the Kentucky region, of that freezing rain that will be setting up. And that's why they do have those winter weather advisories in place for a glaze to 1/10 of an inch of ice across western portions of Tennessee. And I think this will just likely extend into eastern portions and eventually head into Kentucky, while the snow is starting to fly up there towards South Dakota in and around eastern portions of Nebraska and heading into Iowa. And this, one of the things that's changed a little bit is this system has slowed down a little bit. So it's a delayed in when the actual snow starts. But that also means some of the totals have actually increased because of the slower moving nature of this system. So this is going into Friday timeframe as we get deeper into the evening hours, heading up into Illinois, back into Indiana, and then further south where the freezing rain will likely fall down here towards Tennessee, in towards Kentucky. You're likely going to see a changeover from that freezing rain to all snow and eventually head up into West Virginia. So as we get into that Friday timeframe, that's just all snow into Ohio, transfers to all snow into Pittsburgh region. You are expecting, originally it was like 1 to 3 inches in and around the Pittsburgh region. I think we're going to be having to up the ante with that slower moving nature of storm to 3 to 5 inches for those areas in and around the Pittsburgh region. And that will continue to shift off into the East Coast, so likely expanding these winter weather advisories for some of these areas along the coastal regions as the freezing rain starts to slow down and wind down further south, and it's just transferring to all just snow. So we're not looking like a massive snowstorm or anything like that, but hey, some of these areas 1 to 3, 3 to 5, and some of these areas higher elevations even higher than that, 4 to 8 inches of snowfall, you know, from this system. So let's look at that snow swath. So this is exactly where the winter weather advisories unfold. So look at the graph on the right hand corner of the screen. Those lighter shades are likely in the 1 to 3. Those darker shades are the 3 to 5. You start getting into the darker purples here, 4 to 8 inches. So yeah, pretty good swath of snow coming through Iowa, through northern Illinois, through northern portions of Indiana, as well as Ohio, getting up into Kentucky there with that changeover, and then into West Virginia with the higher amounts and the higher elevations, and up into the Pennsylvania region, where pretty much the entire state sees the snowfall from this system. But I do feel a little bit higher amounts as you extend into western PA with those 3 to 5 inches more likely, and then lighter amounts along the coastal regions. But I do feel this will start to fill in, and then I think even this extends into portions of Saturday too with that slower moving system. But there's this freezing rain further south that will be setting up over the next 48 hours. There are already some freezing rain this morning, but I think it just becomes more elevated as we go throughout the day into tomorrow, with pretty much the entire state of Tennessee. You got clocked from that last storm with all snow. Now you're going to be putting a blanket of ice across these regions, and that will extend into Kentucky. Then once you get on the northern side, then it's just that all snow that will be having that changeover. But the lake effect has been intense, guys. I mean, it's very difficult to keep up with these amounts up here in these lake effect snow bands. I was reading one report yesterday. It snowed 5 inches an hour. So it literally picked up in 5.5 hours, 26 inches of snowfall. That is coming down, folks. And this was the latest estimate through Friday at 7 a.m., where some of these higher totals, these banding features, these isolated nature features could set up. Sometimes some areas 65 inches of snowfall, and yes, they do have a game to play in Buffalo on Sunday. So we've got snow all the way through that Saturday time frame. It's not expected to snow on Sunday, but you're going to be getting a lot of snow in and around that stadium area. So it'll be interesting to see. You're going to have to start shoveling again to get that stadium ready for game time by Sunday. But there's the cold front, and you're going to definitely feel it tomorrow morning. These are actual wind chills heading into Friday morning. You see what the Arctic air was this morning, but it drastically changes with those negative numbers encompassing a good part of the central U.S. And that's why they've got those wind chill advisories in place, with that dangerously cold, bitter cold air mass, with those winds really starting to crank. So those negative numbers come back in the picture in and around the Oklahoma City region, and those single digits extend into portions of North Texas. So that's, yes, not as intense as the last one for sure, but it's still very cold for January purposes, as the Arctic, that second blast of Arctic air will be diving through. And I do feel it sticks around for a couple of days. So if you live within these darker shaded pink areas, yeah, you're likely going to fall into the teens below zero some mornings over the next couple of days, especially with all that snow on the ground. And further south, you're definitely going to be feeling it with widespread 30s for highs, 20s for highs further north, and definitely a lot of hard freezes coming back all the way down into the deep south again. That definitely means a lot of disruptions as far as having to not getting used to some of this cold further south. And it's been an extended time with these second blast of colder air. But let's let's take you into the tropics. I mean, we don't really talk about the tropics in January, but we're highlighting this because of what's going to happen next week. And these are sea surface temperature anomalies. And yeah, this is unusually warm for this time of year. This is typically where the warmer temperatures lie. You can see where the colder, temperatures feeling the effects of those Arctic fronts making it all the way down into Mexico. So right along the coastal regions, yeah, those temperatures have drastically cooled off. But I'm showing you this because the energy that's coming out of next week is going to be able to tap into these deeper ocean content waters of the Caribbean. And that is going to send a very high copious amounts of rainfall for January timeframe. Now, if you're looking at these numbers and saying, hey, that's not like that bad, well, January is like the second driest month. I mean, you don't typically see a 2-inch per hour rainfall rate potential down there in the Caribbean, and that's the moisture source where this energy is going to be able to come from and tap into. So that translation means we're about 99 percentile for this time of year, and very high water content is going to be available for especially early next week, as that surge will be coming from the Caribbean, shifting through the Gulf of Mexico and going right up into the Lone Star State, through Oklahoma, through Arkansas, and eventually head right up into the Illinois region with very high water content values. And then at the same time, we'll be watching those storm complexes impact the West Coast. So we've got 2 of them, and this would likely be the second one by then, sending very heavy rain along the western coast regions for pretty much all of California, and that will just be extended. So we've got the El Nino type dynamics definitely coming back, tapping into more of the subtropical jet stream. But we also have the deep ocean content waters that we're going to be able to tap into, along with that freeze line. Look at the red line, folks. This is Saturday morning, all the way down into the deep south again. So the Gulf Coast will be experiencing, even the Florida Panhandle, back to freezing temperatures again as you wake up into Saturday morning. But where things get interesting is the return. So this is Sunday heading into Sunday night. So it's going to be a battle. So you got the south wind from the south pulling in warmer air. Then you got the colder air, the sinking Arctic air that's still likely in place for the last couple of days. And yes, we could see a little bit of a changeover to freezing rain, mainly those areas north of DFW and around the Red River region and northwest of the northwest of the DFW Metroplex, but especially heading into Oklahoma, where we could be seeing that changeover starting towards the midnight time frame into Sunday night, going into that Monday morning, and then eventually heading into Monday afternoon. So it's a quick window. It's likely going to be, a 6 to maybe 10-hour window, but there's going to be a lot of, time, like on the overpasses and the bridges. We got to be concerned about some isolated patchy freezing characteristics from this storm, especially for your Monday morning commute, ahead of the bigger rains that will be filtering in. So I think once we hit the noon time frame, you got time of day to work with. I think a lot of this icy, slushy mess will start to subside a little bit as it lifts further north. But as we get into the evening time frame again, with daytime, just overall time of day, and you got a little bit more snowpack on the ground to be working with up here towards Illinois and Iowa here. So yes, I think we'd be looking at definitely some freezing rain setting up across Illinois, while further south is just that all rain into Louisiana, into Mississippi. These are the areas that are desperately into a drought. Then further north, we'll see that transition to all snow. But here's the likely setup where freezing rain could unfold just right there, just on the northwest side of the DFW Metroplex and around the Red River, getting into Oklahoma through Arkansas. There's the setup through Tennessee, through Missouri, into Illinois, and back up into Indiana, and eventually heading up into Michigan, and well as Wisconsin, with that freezing rain likely from that Sunday night to Tuesday morning time frame within this region, but it's got a lot of water to work with, right? I mean, we're not going to be lacking precipitation, that's for sure. You've got the 1-2 punch. We got those systems that will be coming in out west with very heavy rain along the coastal regions, and especially heading into California and portions of the deep southwest regions. And then you got that second pocket of energy that's coming from the Caribbean, lifting into Texas with a good swath of 2 to 4 times the amount of rainfall that you typically see this time of year. So we're likely going to be seeing flood watches down here into South Texas, into Louisiana, into Mississippi, even portions of Arkansas, but definitely a wet week ahead starting on Sunday night and heading into Friday with very heavy rain setting up across this region, because we are going to warm up, right? We've been very cold for an extended period of time, several weeks now, with several Arctic blasts and numerous systems. Now we're going to be looking a little bit of a reprieve going into that Monday, Tuesday ahead before that ice setup. And then once you come out of that on Tuesday morning, then will be just warmer conditions for the rest of the week, as those higher temperature anomalies will start to build across the lower 48 and a good part of Canada again. But what's also lurking when those areas are well above average, typically Alaska gets really cold, and that's exactly what's going to happen as we get deeper into next week, and it gets dangerously cold. These are actual temperatures by next weekend up there in Alaska, pushing 40, 50, even upwards to 62 below zero actual air temperature in Alaska. And of course, the wind chill will be even a lot colder than that, getting even crazy cold, 70, almost approaching 80 below zero as far as feels like. So that is dangerously stuff. So typically when this happens and it starts to build, it's not going to last forever, and that's got to go somewhere. So I do feel we warm up in a big way across the lower 48, but with this cold air lurking, winter's not over by any stretch of the imagination. This would likely get pulled down into the lower 48, at least the beginning stages of it, as we begin that first week of February. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update, why I protect you before and after the storm.